I love it. Farming Eureka for this ridiculous 2i Eureka tome for glamour for my summoner was worth it. And with how much of a grind fest that was, that's saying a lot. There, video done and over with if all you wanted is my impression. But if you want to have detail on why I think this way, then stick around. I'm Cole Evyx, and I have something to say. With patch 5.1, the summoner saw some pretty massive sweeping changes that has, in my opinion, absolutely fundamentally shifted some of the ways that it plays and most importantly how it feels. In this video, I'm going to be going over the patch 5.1 changes that were seen with the summoner and my initial impressions after playing it for the past few days. So first off, why so long to get this video out? This video is something that I wanted to do days ago when I first saw the patch 5.1 preliminary notes, but I knew for a fact that with changes like these, that I actually really want to get a real feel for them in the game. I want to take the summoner into some old extremes, some savage content, just casually pugging it, not with my actual raid group, Hades, and the copy factory, and then do just some fun little dungeons with it. I also want to know what kind of numbers were going out and what the optimal rotation was, because sure you can read something, but that doesn't always equate to how it actually plays and feels. So if you're wanting the optimal rotation and all of those details, then you're actually going to have to wait for my ultimate summoner guide, probably going to come out in the next few days. I still have a few fine details I really want to solve before I make that guide, so we'll see. But back to initial impressions, I'm going to keep it real. When I saw the patch notes and the changes coming, I admit I was a bit unhappy with them actually really unhappy with them if I'm being honest. Were these changes really going to help the summoner? Were they really going to make it feel like a summoner? Was it going to be a ruin mage again or a disease mage? Because we've seen all of those iterations in the past few expansions. How on earth really would nerfing the spread of ruination help the summoner at all? Weight ruination is gone. How is this going to impact the damage? Worse yet, that means also it's going to be a DPS loss for any scholar in the group, which you know, especially lately, scholars in basically every group because they're really powerful healer. In spite of my personal issues with them, which is its own video, but scholar's going to be in the group, and so the rune 2s that they need to weave in between abilities is going to be something that you did do. So you don't offer that anymore. And at the time when I first read them, obviously my impressions were a lot of worry and concern. But before you click off this video or think that I'm gonna go on a tangent hating on the summoner, I'm not. As I said when I started this video, I love the state the summoner is in right now. So let's first off start with the non-pet changes and just focus on those. So looking at AoE changes, because these are the easiest to get out of the way, Bane now has a quality of life increase where the duration of miasma and bio are maximized when Bane is used. Bane no longer spreads ruination because ruination doesn't exist anymore. Pain Flare has been nerfed by 20 potency down to 130 from 150. So it's really kind of unimpressive when you consider how heavy Red Mage and Black Mage can hit with their AoE. I'll just be honest, meh. Other changes include quality of life changes to both Dreadworm Trance and Fireblood Trance. Remember that they share a recast timer with one another, both are down from 60 seconds to 55 seconds. This is actually a decent quality of life increase, allowing them to fit better into a minute cycle, and that can actually help you recover a bit more if you're from rotation drift. Another quality of life increase is now that Bahamut can execute Wormwave once when it's summoned immediately, and fact is, I am ashamed to admit that I actually never realized it didn't do that in the first place. Today I learned something, well, a few days ago. Last up, we have a solid quality of life improvement on Everlasting Flight. The healing over time effect applied by the Phoenix to your entire party is going to be bumped up from 20 to 21 seconds, which given 3-second ticks means that you don't need to worry about losing that one last tick if you're not on the right time. And at 100 healing potency per tick, totaling 700 consistently, it's okay. So quality of life overall on the board does feel pretty good. Decent number shifts that make it as a whole have a bit more flow and consistency. Now, when it comes to non-pet raw potency changes, we need to keep in mind these two core facts. Pets are no longer off of the global cooldown, now they're on the global cooldown with their abilities, and have received substantial changes here. And then second of all, we have lost ruination, and that used to buff the damage of our rune spells and scholar spells, so keep that in mind when you hear all of these changes. So first off, Try Disaster now deals 300 potency when cast, and so you're just going to get an instant off global cooldown burst of damage right there. Well, when we're talking about making up for the loss of ruination, this helps. Reinforced potency was boosted by 40 as well to a total of 300 potency. Now that's another big boost to make up for ruination being lost as well. Now lastly, Bio 3 and Miasma 3 have had their potencies increased from 40 to 50. This does include the initial cast damage of Miasma 3, and so constantly you're going to be dealing 100 potency with each 3-second tick of your dots. So on the whole, I actually think that the summoner has had definitely a net gain in potency by losing ruination and blending that damage into the rest of their kit, and I also think that this makes ruin seem less like a major factor of the kit. And if I'm being super honest, I am very much all for breaking summoner off of the ruin mage stereotype, so I like this. And let's talk pets. This is probably one of the most controversial changes for a long time now, that people have held the sentiment that pets are basically just glorified damage over time effects that have sometimes very nasty delay in executing abilities, but they have like a pixelated graphic on screen. That's all people have been calling them for a few years now since A Realm Reborn. This unfortunately was only compounded when the summoner gained abilities for the pets that were ridiculously low potency abilities this expansion, but also off the global cooldown. Instantly this downgraded the pet from like a core part of your kit to just like a non-priority or just a lesser part of an actual rotation. For better or worse, I too felt this, and that the pet was just a tacked on off global cooldown thing to throw on. It felt less like a summoner commanding my pet significantly, and more like a ruin mage that weaved in pet commands between ruins. Edgy Assault 1 and Edgy Assault 2 are now on your global cooldown, but are instant cast and can be used while moving. So the pet changes starting with Garuda are that Garuda's Rend Blade now has a potency lowered from 40 to 30. Not really happy seeing lower potency on pets, but remember this is an AoE attack and it is Garuda's basic ability that they're gonna spam. Aerial Slash potency has been increased by a solid 90 to 150. Slipstream, a small area of effect that is still very easy for mobs to walk out of, has had its initial potency increased by 30 to 50. The damage over time then was increased from 20 to 50. Duration, however, was reduced from 15 to 9 seconds. So now you get 3 ticks of 50 potency rather than 5 of 20. So 20 by 5 is going to be 100 potency before with the damage over time. And then 3 of 50 is 150, so it is still a net buff, especially when you include the 30 more potency, and that's going to total for 200 damage potency if mobs stand in it the entire duration. When push comes to shove, there is no real doubt that Garuda is the best pet when it comes to AoE. Or honestly, it's really the only real choice that you have when it comes to AoE, but these buffs do make it a fair bit stronger and may, in my opinion, do offset the loss of Ruination and the lowered potency on Pain Flare. Again, though, this does play into the idea of pets being a more core fundamental part of your kit, and this is actually something that I strongly welcome on a class called Summoner. Next up is Evyx Edgy, and this is going to be your go-to single target damage summon. Crimson Cyclone deals a pretty decent 250 potency. This is an increase of a whopping 150 potency, so that's very significant. Flaming Crush also had another massive 150 potency increase to 250 as well, but now if you use it for area of effect damage, it only deals 250 potency to the first enemy and 125 for the rest. So Garuda by far still owns area of effect. Inferno, the Enkindle ability for Ifrit, now had its direct damage potency increased by 100 to a total of 300. Keep in mind though that this still has the damage over time effect for 20 potency over 15 seconds, so this does hit for a total potency of 400. Overall, this does feel great to me that now Ifrit is now like a worthwhile of your part of your kit to use and actually hits for something worth using. Now Titan Edgy, I still don't have anything nice to really say about Titan Edgy. This is actually probably the biggest disappointment of the summons for me personally right now. Very Strength from Earth and Armor was boosted by 10% to 30% of your maximum HP, which on a squishy summoner is still vastly unimpressive, and I do miss Titan Edgy being able to tank itself and be healed by the summoner. I really did like that for past content like Heaven on High and Eureka. And Rama Extreme back in the day, if anyone remembers that. Mountain Buster potency was raised by a ridiculous 180 potency to 250, and so still though, when you compare it to Evyx Edgy, this is not going to make it suddenly replace Evyx in single target scenarios. That shield that you give yourself cannot be justified in an extreme fight or savage rating in any capacity in my opinion. Earth and Fury potency was also increased by 100 potency to 300, and yeah, it does have the damage over time effect for an additional 100 potency over 15 seconds, totaling this to 400 just like Inferno on Evyx. But the problem is that Titan Edgy is that its competition is either Garuda with AoE, which you can't compete, and then Ifrit just offers more damage outright, and more damage will always be preferable in a raid, or almost always preferable in a raid, than personal self-protection. If you would die, then so would every other squishy in the raid, making this pointless, unless there's some sort of mind-bogglingly painful single target soak that hits 1 DPS and then that can be signed off to you. But ultimately, say you do have 80k HP, 30% of that is 24k HP, and that's not really going to make you survive much more. But in total, for the pets, this still doesn't change that we have very specific summon for very specific particular scenarios. Dungeons with AoE, summon Garuda. Any single target, summon Ifrit. And Titan is just there hanging out there being a chicken nugget. Part of me still wishes I had a reason to swap summons and go from Garuda to Ifrit to Titan in one fight, but that remains to ever be seen. So now with all the changes gone over, here are my impressions of playing the new summoner. First off, if you want mobility in a caster, then the summoner bar none offers that. Playing the summoner lets me weave in and jump around like an absolute maniac. Pet abilities are all instant cast. Rune 4 is instant cast, Rune 2 is instant cast, but at the cost of 40 potency from Rune 3, and even Rune 3 is instant cast when you use Dreadworm Trance. In fact, Dreadworm Trance you should basically really think of as the triple cast of summoners that ends with a Glorious Pang. Even when you're in the Phoenix mode and then you're going to be spamming the Phoenix abilities, those are also so instant cast that you can weave in while moving. Literally the only times that you need to stand still during an entire fight are when you're casting Rune 3 or Miasma 3 outside of Dreadworm Trance. With pet skills and Rune 4 in the mix now, you're really going to have to be casting one heck of a lot less Rune 3. Aside from that, I was running around in all my fights like a bard chasing after Hrothgar in shiny metallic 2B leggings. Actually, that being said, since you have 2 global cooldown pet skills, they have 2 charges on them and you do get 1 charge back roughly every 30 seconds. It seems to be impacted by spell speed, is why I say roughly. I would need to suss out that detail, but ultimately this means that you feel very much less like a Ruin Mage. Ruination is also gone, and so you don't need to focus part of your rotation around that window. Not to mention during Phoenix Trance, you spam Fountain of Fire and Brand of Purgatory that are basically pet actions and certainly are not Ruin. So you can go quite a while during an entire fight without actually needing to cast Ruin 3 outside of your opener, where yeah, the Ruin 3 is definitely part of your opener, so do expect that. So to me, the idea of a Ruin Mage is gone. Pets felt way more core to my kit and my rotation. And now in terms of Disease Mage with dots, reality is that during an ideal optimized opener rotation, you will use Try Disaster quickly. Personal practice myself that after using the opener, casting Miasma 3 and Pile 3 are very, very rarely something that you're going to do, because Try Disaster itself has a 50-second cooldown. Dreadworm Trance puts Try Disaster off a cooldown, and so does Phoenix Trance, making it so that you can use Try Disaster quickly off of the global cooldown. So goodbye Disease Mage. So reality was, for me at least, as someone who wanted to play Summoner for the pets and to live that kind of fantasy and be like something totally different from the rest of the DPS and have them like be the summons be a core part of my kit, I'm absolutely living for it. It is now much more that way. I'm not even getting into how great it obviously feels to summon Bahamut and weave in his Worm Waves and Akamorn, or how crazy it is to summon Phoenix and use his Brand of Purgatory and Fountain of Fire abilities, replacing my own, that lead into using Revelation and just bathing the entire field in fire and probably lagging people to death. With the baby Edgy now being actually impactful and playing a core role in your kit rather than being like a shunned part baby weird thing in your entire cycle, it is actually like all come together now and feels so darn good. So good that I can say that absolutely heinous grind for 2 Eureka Glam is finally worth it. We're not even getting into the fact that you can bring massively useful party utility through Devotion, giving all allies a 5% damage buff every 180 seconds off the global cooldown with no effort. As the healer main, I can say that Aston me can eat their heart out at this. Or the fact that Summoner is the only DPS that can use a combat revive aside from Res Mage. I mean Red Mage. Maybe they can't revive as quickly, but you know what, they sure can help with Swift Cast Revived and casting Revive in the first place. I don't really count Everlasting Flight as really utility in the Summoner, because reality is that those are just a part of your rotation, and it's not like you're timing Everlasting Flight to offset some massive raid-wide AoE damage in the first place. And if it does heal and help the healers, it does, and that's nice. But I don't really think any Summoner would say that they hold Phoenix until massive raid-wide AoE and pop it for that heal. At 700 healing potency over time, absolutely, is it nice? Yeah, but you have damage to deal, so focus on that. So I think that it's more just an interesting flavor, and that it does pay homage to the crazy summoners from Final Fantasy XI like myself that did spec into healing summoner mode. Last but not least, I should probably mention this because I know a lot of people will be interested, is yeah, the summoner damage on FF logs right now is absolutely flaming freaking bonkers, but if I'm being honest with you, this is not going to last long. I do not see it lasting long, because you know what, you need some drawback for giving it a revive in combat. Honestly, that is why I did leave this also to the end, because I feel, yeah, nerfs are going to probably come very quickly, and they are going to tone the summoner damage down quite a bit. But remember that the play and the feel of the class and enjoying what you play matters more than being the literal #1 DPS job on FF logs. The class and feel and style will exist long after some number potencies are tweaked. And you know what, as someone who does have literally everything to 80 for months now. Summoner, there's nothing that plays like it now. It feels very, very different from literally everything else. And so if you like this playstyle, stick to it, because you know what, I have not found anything like it yet. So overall, I can say I love the Summoner in its current state. These changes finally broke the Ruin Mage and Disease Mage stereotype. The pet feels like a core part of your kit and really completes the full cycle of normal baby summons to freaking Bahamut to oh my gosh, Phoenix just appeared. Love it, totally great changes, and this might actually become my main this patch after this. I am actually that impressed. Very much enjoying myself.